The dimensional fabric screamed. In the space between realities, where quantum foam bubbled and infinite universes pressed against one another like soap bubbles in an endless cosmic bath, something tore. Not gently, not with the precise surgical care of a sanctum sanctorum portal or the calculated mathematics of a shield dimensional gateway. This was violent, hungry. A ripping of reality's skin by something that existed in too many places at once. Something that had spread itself across an entire world's worth of blood and shadow, now finding itself compressed, relocated, shoved through a hole in existence it hadn't asked for. Alucard experienced the transition as he experienced most things, with amused interest in the novelty and vague disappointment that it probably wouldn't kill him. The no-life king, vampire, monster, concept given crimson form, emerged into Marvel's reality above Hell's Kitchen at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. He materialized 40 feet above a crumbling tenement rooftop, hovering in defiance of physics in a way that would have made Tony Stark's repulsors look pedestrian. Shadows peeled off him like steam, his form flickering between states, man-shaped, then bat-winged, then something older and more terrible that the human eye refused to properly process. The red duster coat settled around him as gravity reluctantly remembered it had a job to do. Wide-brimmed hat shadowed a face that wore the grin of something that had seen civilizations rise and fall, and found them all equally amusing. "Well," Alucard said to the New York skyline, his voice a bass rumble that carried harmonics of every soul he'd ever consumed, millions of voices speaking in perfect unison. "This is different." His senses expanded outward. No integra, the psychic tether that had bound him for decades, the golden chain of loyalty and command that defined his purpose, was simply absent. He reached across the dimensional gulf, found nothing. She existed, certainly, somewhere in his home reality, but unreachable. The binding remained, theoretical but unenforceable across universal boundaries. For the first time in longer than most nations had existed, Alucard had no master. The feeling was novel, unsettling, intriguing. "Freedom," he mused, examining the word like a jeweler examining a stone of dubious quality. How terribly boring. His supernatural senses painted the city in shades of life and death. 8 million heartbeats, the usual symphony of human existence, fear, joy, desperation, hope, all the flavors that made humanity so endlessly fascinating. But there was something else, underneath. The city thrummed with asterisk power in ways London never had. Genetic mutations creating localized reality distortions, technological signatures that bent physics. And magic, oh yes, magic thick enough to taste, woven through the city's foundations like rebar through concrete. And vampires, he could taste them on the air. Not many, not like the old days, but present. Wrong somehow. Their scent was off, chemical, viral. Not the deep mystical corruption that he recognized, but something that reeked of biology rather than damnation. "Fascinating," Alucard said. "Even the undead are different here." 3 blocks away, a woman screamed. Alucard's head tilted, predator smooth. His grin widened, revealing teeth that were slightly too sharp, too many, arranged in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Violence. The universal language. Some things, at least, remained consistent across realities. He stepped forward and fell upward into shadow, his form dissolving into a mass of bats and crimson darkness that poured down the building's face like liquid night. Maria Hill *** was having the kind of evening that made her question her career choices. "Say that again," she said into her headset, eyes locked on the holographic display floating above her shield workstation. The Triskelions' command center hummed with activity around her. 36 analysts monitoring everything from Stark's latest lab accident to potential Hydra cells in Prague. Dimensional incursion, Hell's Kitchen, coordinates uploaded, the analyst repeated, voice tight with professional tension. Energy signature is, ma'am, it's not matching any known profile. Not Asgardian Bifrost, not Sorcerer Portal, not tech-based dimensional tech. It's reading as Class 7 mystical event, but the quantum displacement suggests. I don't need the science, he'll cut in, already pulling up response protocols. I need options. How many civilians in blast radius? Incursion point was rooftop level. No immediate casualties, but ma'am, the analyst hesitated. Whatever came through, it's moving fast, and the life sign readings are contradictory. Contradictory how? Satellites are registering one target. Ground sensors are registering thousands. Thermal imaging shows ambient temperature, but motion trackers indicate high-speed displacement. It's like the target is both singular and multiple simultaneously. Hill's jaw tightened. She'd been with S.H.I.E.L.D. long enough to know that when reality stopped making sense, you were dealing with either extremely advanced technology or magic. And Hell's Kitchen had enough supernatural activity to make even hardened agents nervous. Deploy containment team Echo 7. Non-lethal protocols until we know what we're dealing with. And get me. The display flickered. Every screen in the command center went crimson for exactly 2 seconds. When they returned to normal, there was a new data point on the Hell's Kitchen map. A fresh body. Then another. Then 3 more. Ma'am, the analyst's voice had gone very quiet. We're reading multiple casualties, exsanguination, time of death within the last 30 seconds. Maria Hill closed her eyes briefly, then opened them with the kind of focus that had made her one of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s most effective commanders. Get me Doctor Strange. Get me Blade. And somebody wake up whoever's on Avengers duty tonight. Captain Rogers is at the tower, ma'am. Perfect. Tell him we've got a vampire. How do you know it's? Because in Hell's Kitchen at 3 a.m., when people start dropping dead from blood loss, it's asterisk always a vampire. Matt Murdock asterisk tasted blood on the air before his enhanced senses registered the screaming. Daredevil stood on a rooftop 2 blocks from the disturbance, his radar sense painting the world in acoustic relief. The usual symphony of Hell's Kitchen, traffic, arguments, late-night lovers, the desperate and the dangerous, had hit a sour note. Fear-spiked heartbeats, the copperpenny scent of fresh blood, and something else. Something that made his Catholic-raised instincts scream warnings his rational mind couldn't quite articulate. The heartbeat was wrong, not absent. He tracked enough vampires to know the flatline silence of the undead. This was present but impossible asterisk. Thousands of heartbeats, maybe tens of thousands. All synchronized perfectly, all emanating from a single point of origin. Like listening to a stadium full of people with one shared pulse. What are you? Matt whispered. The answer came in screaming. Daredevil moved, his billy clubs already in hand as he swung between buildings with the precision of a man who'd mapped Hell's Kitchen so thoroughly he could navigate it blind. Which, technically, he did. The radar sense showed him everything. The fleeing civilians, the bodies, 3 no, 5 now in it. The thing that wore a man shaped the way a person might wear a costume. Alucard stood in an alley off 48th Street, one hand buried wrist-deep in a man's chest. The victim, A gang member based on the colors, probably one of the kitchen's many predators, made wet choking sounds as blood ran from his mouth. But it wasn't running down. It was running asterisk up, defying gravity, flowing into Alucard's palm in spiraling crimson streams that glowed faintly in the darkness. "Disappointing," Alucard said conversationally, as if discussing weather. "Your blood tastes of chemicals and desperation, cocaine, methamphetamine, cheap beer, and bad decisions." He withdrew his hand. The gang member collapsed, drained to a husk in seconds. The quality of criminal has declined significantly, it seems. The remaining 4 gang members, who'd been attempting to mug a late-night subway worker when this nightmare interrupted their evening, scrambled backward. One raised a gun with shaking hands. "Oh good," Alucard said, turning to face them fully. "Firearms, I do appreciate tradition." The gun barked 3 times, center mass, headshot, all perfect marks. Alucard caught the bullets, physically plucked them from the air with fingers that moved too fast to track, then examined them with the air of a wine snob evaluating a disappointing vintage. 9mm, how pedestrian. He flicked them away. "Allow me to demonstrate proper firearm etiquette." His right hand moved to his coat. When it emerged, it held a hand cannon that looked like it could down elephants. The casual, 13 pounds of blessed silver and sanctified steel, customized beyond all reason. "Wait," the gunman started. Alucard fired once. The .454 casual round took the man's head clean off. The report echoed off alley walls like thunder. The body stood for a moment, confused by its sudden lack of decision-making capacity, then folded. "Run!" someone screamed. Daredevil landed between them and Alucard. "That's enough," Matt said, voice pitched low and dangerous, the tone he used when he needed criminals to understand they were facing the devil of Hell's Kitchen. Alucard's head tilted, inhuman fluidity in the motion. Those orange-tinted sunglasses reflected no light. Behind them, eyes glowed crimson, and Matt's radar sense went haywire trying to process what it was detecting. The figure before him registered as solid and ephemeral simultaneously, present and not present, alive and dead, and something that had transcended both categories. "Fascinating," Alucard purred. "You can't see, can you? Yet you perceive me perfectly. Echolocation, electromagnetic sensitivity, or something more exotic." He took a step forward. The shadows moved with him, wrong, possessive. "And you dress as a devil to frighten the wicked. How delightfully theatrical. We're going to get along splendidly." "The killing stops now," Matt said. His heartbeat was elevated but controlled. No fear. Alucard appreciated that. "Does it?" Alucard smiled. "And who precisely do you imagine will stop me? You. A man in a devil costume with impressive senses and above-average fighting skills." He laughed, and it echoed with too many voices. "I've fought crusades, little devil. I've ended bloodlines. I've walked through armies and emerged baptized in their life's blood. You're courageous, I respect that, but courage without power is just interesting suicide." "Test that theory," Daredevil said. Behind him, the surviving gang members fled. Good. Matt didn't need civilian complications while dealing with whatever this was. S.H.I.E.L.D. would be coming. He just needed to. Alucard was behind him. Matt hadn't heard him move, hadn't sensed the displacement. One moment the vampire was 10 feet away, the next he was close enough that Matt could feel the asterisk wrongness radiating off him like heat from a furnace. No body heat, no breath, just the psychic weight of something that should not exist. "Impressive reflexes," Alucard whispered directly into Matt's ear. "You almost blocked that." Matt spun, billy club swinging in a tight arc that should have connected with temple or jaw. Alucard leaned backward, impossibly far, spine bending in ways that would have shattered vertebrae. The club passed harmlessly through empty air. But almost isn't quite enough, is it? Alucard's hand shot out, fingers closing around Matt's throat with strength that could crush steel. He lifted Daredevil one-handed, holding him at arm's length like a specimen. "Let me properly introduce myself," Alucard said, voice dropping to something ancient and terrible. "I am Alucard, Nosferatu, No-Life King. I have existed for over 500 years. I have consumed millions of lives and contained their souls within me even now. I have been impaled, burned, shot, stabbed, exorcised, and blessed, and I remain. I am the monster that monsters fear. I am the nightmare that stalks nightmares. I am." A web whipped out of the darkness and yanked the casual from Alucard's other hand. "Definitely overcompensating for something," a younger voice called out. Seriously, that speech was like, "I am Dracula, fear my hot topic aesthetic. Dude, read the room." Spider-Man swung into the alley, landing in a crouch on a dumpster. The casual dangled from webbing in his hand. Also, pro tip, in New York we don't monologue, we have actual personalities. It's this wild concept where, "Oh crap, is that Daredevil? Put him down, that's my friend. We have coffee sometimes." Well, asterisk, I have coffee, he has whatever sad people drink. Alucard turned his head to regard Spider-Man without releasing Daredevil. The angle was wrong. No human neck bent that far. "A spider," Alucard observed. "How wonderfully appropriate. Tell me, little spider, do you know what spiders and vampires have in common?" We both look great in black. We're both predators that liquefy our prey's insides and consume them." "Okay, that's horrifying and also asterisk super asterisk rude. I'm a asterisk friendly asterisk neighborhood Spider-Man. The friendly is right there in the..." Alucard threw Daredevil at Spider-Man. Matt's enhanced senses gave him just enough warning to twist midair. Peter's reflexes did the rest, catching Matt in a web-cushioned net that sent them both tumbling into a controlled landing 20 feet away. "You okay?" Peter whispered. "Ribs cracked," Matt grunted. "He's strong, really strong and fast." "Yeah, I got that from the casual throw the Daredevil move. What is he?" "Vampire, but not like any I've encountered." "Great, and I left my garlic at home." Alucard retrieved his gun. The webbing simply dissolved into shadows at his touch, and holstered it with the smooth precision of someone who'd done it 100,000 times. "I like you both," he announced. "You have courage, spirit. You fight not because you can win, but because you believe you must. That's admirable." He adjusted his hat. "But I tire of this introduction. This city holds much more interesting prey than street criminals and noble vigilantes." "You're not going anywhere," Matt said, forcing himself upright despite the pain. "Aren't I?" Alucard's form blurred. Not super speed, Matt would have tracked that. This was spatial displacement, reality editing itself to accommodate his movement. One moment he stood before them. The next he was shadow, a crimson-edged darkness that poured upward along the alley wall like liquid running in reverse. "We'll meet again, little devil, little spider," his voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. "This world smells of conflict, of power, of worthy prey. I find myself quite looking forward to." A circular portal of golden light tore open mid-alley. Doctor Strange stepped through, the cloak of levitation billowing dramatically despite the lack of wind. His hands moved in complex patterns, mystical symbols burning into existence around him. By the Vishanti, Strange said, eyes widening as he perceived what his magical senses revealed. That's not possible. The soul count alone should have. He cut himself off, focusing. Unknown entity, by the authority vested in me as Sorcerer Supreme, I command you to. Alucard reformed, genuinely interested for the first time since arriving. His shadow coalesced into humanoid shape, that perpetual grin widening. A sorcerer, he breathed, and there was actual delight in his voice. Oh, this reality does have potential. Strange's hands moved faster, binding spells layering over containment wards. You will submit to. I really won't, Alucard interrupted. But please continue. It's been decades since anyone tried to bind me with magic. The last priest who attempted it screamed for 3 days before his mind shattered. I'm curious what your version entails. The binding spells struck Alucard like chains of golden light. They wrapped around him, through him, intricate mystical working that would have frozen a demon prince in place. Alucard looked down at them, looked back up at Strange, and laughed. It wasn't a human laugh. It was the sound of every soul he'd consumed laughing in unison. A chorus of the damned finding infinite amusement in mortal pretension. The binding spells shattered. Impressive, Alucard said, but you're trying to bind a singular entity. I am millions. Your spell would need to be millions of times more complex too. A shield Quinjet screamed overhead, spotlights lancing down to illuminate the alley in harsh white light. Unidentified hostile, a magnified voice boomed. Surrender immediately or we will open fire. Alucard glanced up at the aircraft, then at Strange, then at the 2 street-level heroes who were clearly preparing for round 2 despite being outmatched. Well, he said, spreading his arms wide in a gesture of theatrical welcome, it appears I've made an impression. How wonderful. He tipped his hat to Strange specifically. Sorcerer Supreme, such a delightfully pretentious title. We must do this again. Perhaps when you've prepared more exotic bindings. I do so enjoy a challenge. You're not leaving, Strange said, hands already weaving a more complex spell. Aren't I? The shadows of every building, every dumpster, every fire escape in a 3-block radius suddenly deepened, darkened, became absolutely, utterly black. The shield spotlights couldn't penetrate them. The streetlights flickered and died. When the lights returned, Alucard was gone. 40 blocks away, on the rooftop of an abandoned warehouse in the Bronx, Alucard materialized from a pool of darkness. He dusted off his coat with the casual precision of someone who just attended a mildly interesting dinner party rather than a multi-hero confrontation. Sorcerers, vigilantes, surveillance technology that would make Maxwell jealous, and the night is young. He gazed out at the sprawling city, this new hunting ground, this reality that didn't know what it had just inherited. Somewhere in the darkness, another heartbeat called to him. Another vampire, old, powerful, ancient by this world's standards. And angry. Alucard's grin became something predatory, anticipatory, hungry in ways that had nothing to do with blood and everything to do with the promise of worthy conflict. Come then, he whispered to the New York night. Show me what passes for apex predator in this reality. Show me if you're worthy of my attention. In the distance, something howled. Not a wolf. Something that had been human once, transformed by a curse older than nations. Oh yes, Alucard purred. This will do nicely. The Triskelion, Shield Headquarters Asterisk 3:47 a.m. Maria Hill stood before a holographic display, that made increasingly less sense the longer she stared at it. "Explain to me," she said with the careful patience of someone suppressing the urge to shoot something, "how one individual evades 3 enhanced operatives, the Sorcerer Supreme, and a Quinjet equipped with thermal tracking, quantum displacement sensors, and magical signature detection." The analyst, Jenkins, young enough that this was probably his first reality-bending crisis, swallowed hard. "Ma'am, the target didn't evade tracking. He dissolved, literally became shadow and dispersed across a 3-block radius simultaneously. Our sensors registered him in 47 locations at once before signal degradation made tracking impossible." "Dissolved," Hill repeated flatly. "Yes, ma'am. Dr. Strange's preliminary assessment suggests the entity exists in a state of quantum superposition combined with mystical phasing. He's both singular and multitudinous, concentrated and dispersed. It's breaking our normal threat classification parameters." Hill pulled up the forensic data from the Hell's Kitchen incident. 5 bodies, complete exsanguination, time of death within a 6-minute window, cause of death. She paused. "These aren't bites," she said, zooming in on the autopsy preliminaries. "No fang marks, no throat wounds. The blood was extracted through," she read further, frowning, "through the palms. What the hell kind of vampire feeds through its hands?" "Unknown, ma'am. Dr. Strange has requested samples for mystical analysis. He says the energy signature reminds him of something called a true vampire, different from the virus-based vampires in our files. More conceptual." "Conceptual vampires. Wonderful." Hill minimized the display and pulled up the contact list. "Get me Blade. If anyone knows about vampire variants, it's him. And tell Strange I need a full briefing in 3 hours. I want to know what we're dealing with before it kills again." "Ma'am, there's one more thing." Jenkins highlighted a portion of the incident footage. "We have audio from Spider-Man's suit camera. The entity identified itself." Hill played the clip. That voice, too many voices layered together, bass harmonics that shouldn't exist in a human throat, spoke with theatrical precision. "I am Alucard, Nosferatu, No-Life King." Maria Hill had been dealing with enhanced individuals, aliens, and supernatural threats for over a decade. She'd learned to trust her instincts when something felt wrong, and this felt very wrong. "Alucard," she said softly. "Run that name through every database we have. Mythology, literature, historical records, interdimensional threat archives. I want to know if that name means something." "Already done, ma'am. We found one interesting hit. There's a classified British file from an organization called Hellsing. Access requires level 10 clearance and approval from." "I'm level 10, Hill interrupted. "Pull it." "Ma'am, it's flagged as fictional intelligence, a pop culture reference, not actual threat data. Some kind of anime or manga from the early 2000s about." "Pull it." Jenkins obeyed. The file blossomed across the holographic display. Hill scanned it, her expression growing progressively more grim. "Hellsing Ultimate, Japanese manga and anime series. Main character, Alucard, ancient vampire in service to the Hellsing organization. Abilities include regeneration from near-total destruction, shape-shifting, intangibility, soul absorption, army of absorbed familiars numbering in the millions." "It's a fictional character," Jenkins said. "From entertainment media, it can't be." "Yesterday, the Avengers fought a Norse god," Hill cut him off. "Last month, we had incursions from 3 parallel Earths. Last year, Half the universe was erased by a purple alien with a magic glove. At what point do we stop being surprised when fiction becomes fact? She pulled up a comparison image, a screenshot from the anime next to the S.H.I.E.L.D. surveillance footage from Hell's Kitchen. Same red coat, same wide-brimmed hat, same impossible grin. Get me everything on this Hellsing series, Hill ordered. Plot summaries, character analyses, power demonstrations. If this entity is what that fiction depicted, we need to know what we're dealing with. And Jenkins. Ma'am. Find out if there's any way to weaponize fiction against him. If he's following fictional rules, maybe we can too. Greenwich Village, the Sanctum Sanctorum. 4:23 a.m. Dr. Stephen Strange stood in his sanctum's library, ancient texts floating around him in a slowly rotating sphere as he cross-referenced mystical taxonomies at superhuman speed. The eye of Agamotto hung open on his chest, the time stone within pulsing with gentle green light as it helped him sort through temporal causality chains. Wang entered carrying 2 cups of tea, pointedly cleared his throat and waited. Strange didn't look up. Not now, Wang. I'm trying to classify something that shouldn't exist. You say that every Tuesday, Wang replied, setting 1 cup on the nearest stable surface. Drink. You've been consulting the Vishanti texts for an hour. Dehydration won't help you solve interdimensional vampire problems. Strange finally glanced over, took the tea, and drained half of it in 1 gulp. It's not interdimensional, or rather it is, but that's not the primary concern. The entity that shattered your binding spells. Alucard, yes, Strange waved a hand. A spectral recreation of the Hell's Kitchen encounter materialized between them, the vampire's form rendered in ghostly blue light. Watch carefully. What do you see? Wang studied the image with the practiced eye of someone who'd spent decades cataloging supernatural threats. Shape-shifting, shadow manipulation, supernatural strength and speed. Classic vampire presentation with above-average power levels. High-tier Nosferatu, certainly, but nothing we haven't encountered before. Look deeper, use your third eye. Wang complied, his mystical perception activating. Then he stepped backward involuntarily, nearly knocking over his tea. By the Vishanti, he breathed. That's not 1 soul, that's... Millions, Strange confirmed grimly. I counted. 3,624,712 distinct soul signatures, all compressed into a single corporeal form. He's not a vampire in the traditional sense. He's a asterisk reliquary asterisk, a living prison containing an army of the damned. How is that possible? The human form couldn't contain. It's not human. Strange dismissed the recreation and pulled up a different reference, an ancient text in Sanskrit. I found references in the Vedas, in Babylonian necromantic scrolls, in Egyptian death rituals. The concept exists across multiple cultures, a being that transcends death by consuming it, by making death part of themselves. They're called different names, Soul Eater, Death Walker, the Undying Monarch, but the principle is the same. And this Alucard is one of them. More than that, he's achieved something I've only seen theoretical references to. He's reached a state of conceptual existence. He's not bound by his physical form anymore. That body he wears is just a preference, a costume. His true self is distributed across every shadow, every drop of blood he's shed, every soul he's consumed. Destroying the body would be meaningless. Wang set down his tea very carefully. How do we kill something like that? We don't, Strange said flatly. Not with conventional means. Maybe the Infinity Stones at full power. Maybe a Reality Stone user could unmake him. But barring cosmic-level intervention, he shook his head. We'd need to somehow destroy every soul he's absorbed simultaneously, and even then, I suspect his core self would persist. He's transcended the normal rules of existence. So what do we do? Strange was quiet for a long moment. We talked to him. The entity spoke. It reasoned. It had personality, humor, theatrical tendencies. It's not a mindless force of destruction. It's a person. Incredibly dangerous, utterly lethal, but still a person with motivations and psychology we might leverage. Negotiate with a vampire that shattered your binding spells like they were made of tissue paper. Yes, that's a terrible plan. Do you have a better one? One considered. No, but I'm going on record as saying this is a terrible plan. Duly noted. Strange opened a portal to the mirror dimension. I'm going to try to track his mystical signature. He left enough residual energy at the Hell's Kitchen site that I should be able to. An alarm screamed through the sanctum. Not the physical alarms, the mystical ones, ancient wards keyed to detect supernatural violence on a massive scale. Both sorcerers' heads snapped toward the source. The Bronx, Wung said, already moving toward the portal chamber. Multiple casualties, massive death magic signature. He paused, face going pale. Stephen, there are 2 signatures. Alucard is there, but so is something else, something old. Strange's jaw tightened. Show me. The scrying pool in the sanctum's central chamber flared to life, showing a bird's-eye view of an industrial section of the Bronx. 2 figures faced each other in a cleared space between warehouses. One wore red, the other wore darkness itself like a royal cloak. Oh no, Strange whispered. Is that Dracula? Strange confirmed. Lord of Earth's vampires, king of the Nosferatu, and if I'm reading his body language correctly, he's very unhappy about the competition. The Bronx, Industrial District *, 4:45 a.m. Alucard stood in the center of what had once been a loading dock, hands in his pockets, grin firmly in place. Around him lay the remains of Dracula's welcoming committee, 12 lesser vampires, reduced to ash and scattered limbs. They'd attacked with admirable coordination, packed tactics, flanking maneuvers, even attempted mystical bindings. It had taken Alucard 45 seconds to annihilate them all. Disappointing, he said to the night. I expected better from this world's vampiric nobility. Are you all so weak, so dependent on this virus? He nudged a pile of ash with his boot. Biological vampirism, how pedestrian, how American *. You dare. The voice came from everywhere, deep, resonant, carrying the weight of centuries and the absolute authority of someone who'd ruled in shadow for longer than most civilizations had existed. Dracula materialized from darkness itself, stepping through a shadow as if it were a doorway. He stood 7 feet tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of presence that made mortals instinctively kneel. His features were sharp, aristocratic, undeniably handsome in the classical sense. He wore the regalia of a lord, not the costume of a monster pretending at nobility, but genuine royal bearing earned through conquest and maintained through absolute dominance. You enter my territory, Dracula said, each word carefully enunciated. You slaughter my subjects. You wear the name of my lineage as if you earned it, and you dare call us weak. Alucard's grin widened. Ah, the local alpha. I was wondering when you'd appear. Tell me, false king, how long have you ruled this city's shadows? A century? 2. 5, Dracula replied coldly. I am Dracula, Lord of the Vampires, King of the Night. I have existed since before your ancestors crawled from the primordial slime. I have built empires in shadow and brought nations to their knees. You are nothing, an interloper, a pretender wearing borrowed power. Borrowed? Alucard laughed, that chorus of the damned sound that made reality shiver. My dear false king, I am Vlad Dracula. Vlad Vlad Teeps, the Impaler. I was impaling enemies of my kingdom when your bloodline was still mortal. I am the original. You are the copy, a pale imitation, a tribute band. Dracula's eyes narrowed. Impossible. I know every elder vampire, every bloodline, every progenitor. You are not in any registry, not in any history. You don't exist. In asterisk this reality, no. Alucard spread his arms wide, coat billowing despite the lack of wind. But in my reality, I am the no-life king. I have consumed millions. I have ended wars by walking onto battlefields. I have served the Hellsing family for a century and learned what true monsters are capable of when properly motivated. He tilted his head. And you, false Dracula, smell of scientific accident, of virus and mutation. You're not even properly undead. You're just infected. The air between them dropped 30 degrees in an instant. Ice crystallized on every surface. Dracula's form began to shift, edges becoming less defined, more monstrous. You will kneel, Dracula hissed, or you will be destroyed. I've heard that before, Alucard replied cheerfully. It's never worked out well for the person saying it. Dracula moved, not with the superhuman speed of a lesser vampire, not with the enhanced reflexes of a mutant. This was the speed of something that had spent 5 centuries mastering predation, refined by the virus that had elevated him beyond mortal limits and amplified by mystical power he'd accumulated through conquest and dark rituals. He crossed the distance between them in a fraction of a second, hand transformed into a blade of hardened bone and mystical energy, aimed directly at Alucard's heart. Alucard caught the strike one-handed. Too slow, he said pleasantly. He twisted. Dracula's wrist shattered with a sound like breaking ice. Before the vampire lord could react, Alucard's other hand was around his throat, lifting him off the ground with casual, terrible ease. Let me show you, Alucard said, voice dropping to that multitonal bass. What a asterisk real Dracula can do. His form shifted. The shadows around them deepened, became absolute, a darkness so complete that even Dracula's supernatural vision couldn't penetrate it. Alucard's eyes blazed crimson, twin suns in the black void. His mouth opened, revealing not fangs but something worse, a throat that seemed to extend infinitely downward into depths where millions of faces screamed silently. I contain millions, Alucard whispered, and the chorus spoke with him. Every life I've taken, every soul I've consumed, every warrior, every soldier, every victim, they're all here, all part of me, all available. Dracula struggled, form shifting through a dozen predatory configurations. Wolf, bat, mist, shadow. Nothing worked. Alucard's grip was absolute, unyielding, the strength of millions applied through a single point. You rule this city's vampires, Alucard continued. How quaint. I've ended vampire crusades. I've walked through armies of the undead and emerged without a scratch. Your virus makes you strong. My curse makes me inevitable. He threw Dracula. The vampire lord's trajectory took him through a warehouse wall, brick and steel parting like tissue paper, through the building itself, and out the far side. He cratered into the loading dock of a structure 200 yards away, the impact creating a blast wave that shattered windows across 3 blocks. Alucard walked forward slowly, each step measured, theatrical. "Get up, false king. That couldn't have hurt. Not really. You've survived worse. So have I. The difference is I've enjoyed worse." Dracula rose from the rubble, form fully monstrous now. 8 feet of muscle and rage, part man, part bat, part something that evolution had wisely decided shouldn't exist. His healing factor, enhanced by both virus and mystical augmentation, had already repaired the broken wrist. Blood ran from a dozen wounds, but they were closing even as Alucard watched. "I will end you," Dracula snarled, voice distorted by his transformation. "I will drink every drop of your corrupted blood and add your power to my own. I will." A shield bounced off his skull with a resonant asterisk clang. Both vampires turned. Captain America stood at the end of the street, shield already returned to his hand, flanked by Iron Man and Black Widow. Behind them, a shield containment team deployed from 3 Quinjets, establishing a perimeter with weapons that crackled with UV energy and blessed silver ammunition. "That's enough," Steve Rogers said, voice carrying the absolute authority of someone who'd commanded armies and faced gods. "Both of you, stand down now." Iron Man's repulsors charged with a rising whine. "I'm getting really tired of vampires." Tony Stark's voice emerged from the suit's speakers. "We've got the Bloodsucker Lord and Crimson McEdgelord having a territorial dispute at 5 a.m. JARVIS, add vampire-specific protocols to my to-do list." "Already compiling options, sir. Might I suggest garlic-based aerosol delivery systems?" "That's racist, JARVIS. Against vampires, sir." "Is it? I honestly don't know the etiquette here." Alucard's attention focused on the new arrivals with predatory interest. "Captain America, I've heard that name, the man out of time, the living legend, the soldier who couldn't stay down." His grin returned. "An Iron Man, genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist, yes, I appreciate the showmanship." "Appreciate it from prison," Tony replied. "We've got holding cells that have contained Loki. I'm sure we can make one work for you." "No," Dracula said flatly, eyes still locked on Alucard. "He's mine. This is vampire business, not your concern." "It became our concern when you two started demolishing city blocks," Natasha said, weapons trained. Her heart rate was elevated but controlled, professional. "And when S.H.I.E.L.D. identified both of you as potential extinction-level threats." "Extinction level?" Alucard seemed delighted. "How flattering." "Shut up," Dracula and Steve said simultaneously. An awkward pause. "Look," Steve continued, shield raised in ready position. "We can do this the easy way or the hard way. The easy way is you both come with us peacefully for assessment and registration. The hard way is we bring you in unconscious." "You cannot contain us," Dracula said with absolute certainty. "I've been hunted by Van Helsing lineages, by S.H.I.E.L.D.'s predecessors, by the Church itself. I always survive. I always escape. You're wasting your time." "He's right about one thing," Alucard said. "You can't contain me, but not because I'll escape." He looked directly at Steve, and for just a moment the theatrical madness faded, replaced by something ancient and tired. "Captain, I've fought in wars. I've served masters who understood what monsters are for. I don't desire conflict with heroes. That's just tedious." "Then surrender," Steve said. "I don't desire it," Alucard repeated. "But that doesn't mean I'll submit to imprisonment because you're uncomfortable with my existence." Tony's scans were running continuously, trying to make sense of the energy signatures. Jarvis, what am I looking at? Sir, the entity in the red coat is radiating energy signatures consistent with approximately 3.6 million distinct human life patterns, all layered within a single corporeal matrix. I cannot explain how this is physically possible. 3.6 million, Tony's voice rose slightly. That's not possible. And yet, Alucard said pleasantly. A circular portal of golden light opened between the two groups. Doctor Strange stepped through, the cloak of levitation spreading wide, making him look larger, more imposing. Enough, Strange said. He looked at Dracula. My lord, with respect, this isn't your fight alone anymore. This entity represents a threat to dimensional stability. Then to Alucard. And you're drawing attention, the wrong kinds of attention. I can sense entities in neighboring dimensions taking notice of your energy signature. Let them notice, Alucard replied. I welcome attention. Attention leads to conflict. Conflict leads to worthy opponents. Worthy opponents lead to the only thing that makes existence interesting. What's that? Natasha asked. The possibility of death. Alucard's grin was sharp as broken glass. I've been searching for someone who can kill me for a very long time, little spider. Your world has gods. It has cosmic entities. It has beings of unimaginable power. He spread his arms wide. Perhaps one of them will finally give me what I truly desire. You want to die? Steve's tone was incredulous. I want to earn death, Alucard corrected. To find an opponent so powerful, so skilled, so utterly superior that they can grant me the final peace I haven't known in 5 centuries. But cheap death, meaningless death, no thank you. If I'm to die, it will be glorious. You're insane, Tony said. Undoubtedly, Alucard's tone was cheerful. But I'm also eternal, incredibly powerful, and currently without a master to direct my activities. Which means I'm going to do what I've always done. Hunt. Fight. Test myself against this reality's strongest warriors until I find one worthy of ending me. Dracula snarled, I'm not finished with you. Yes, you are, Strange said, hands moving in complex patterns. Binding spells different from the ones he'd used before, specifically tailored to Dracula's known weaknesses, materialized around the vampire lord. You violated the supernatural accords by attacking in populated areas. The Avengers have jurisdiction. The accords don't apply to me, Dracula spat. I never signed. You signed in 1952, Natasha interjected, pulling up a holographic document. Under your alternate identity as Vlad Draken, Clause 47, Subsection 3 specifically prohibits unauthorized vampiric combat in urban zones. Dracula's expression was murderous, but he stopped resisting. This isn't over. It is for tonight, Strange said. He looked at Alucard. We need to talk. Do we? Alucard seemed amused. Yes, because in approximately 8 hours, every supernatural faction in North America is going to know you exist. The demon lords will want to recruit you. The celestials will want to judge you. The elder gods will want to consume you. And entities like Mephisto will see you as either opportunity or threat. You need allies. I've never needed allies. You've never been in the Marvel universe before, Tony said. Trust me, lone wolf doesn't work here. We've tried it. It ends badly. Alucard considered this. The Avengers, Earth's mightiest heroes, the living legend, the genius in armor, the widow who moved like death, the sorcerer who commanded reality itself. Not worthy opponents, not yet, but interesting, potentially useful. And he had no integra here, no master to serve, no purpose beyond his own amusement and the eternal search for worthy death. "Very well," Alucard said finally. "We'll talk, but I make no promises. I serve no one but a master worthy of my loyalty, and I bow to no authority that cannot best me in combat." "That's not how civilization works," Steve said. "Captain, I predate most of your civilization. I have my own rules." "Those rules don't apply here." "Then make me comply." Alucard's grin was challenging. "I'm curious if you can." The tension ratcheted higher. Tony's repulsors charged. Natasha's weapons trained center mass. Steve's stance shifted to combat ready. Strange's hands blazed with mystical energy. Alucard stood perfectly still, hands in pockets, that infuriating grin never wavering. "Or," Strange said carefully, "we could table the posturing for now. I have tea. We can discuss this like civilized beings." And Alucard, the sorcerer's tone became pointed. "If you're truly seeking worthy opponents, there are threats coming to Earth that make Dracula look like a child's bedtime story. Threats you might find interesting." That got Alucard's attention. "Go on." "Dormammu, Shumagorath, the Elder Gods, Mephisto, Galactus when he's feeling peckish, Thanos if he ever gets ambitious again. Even the Celestials occasionally stop by to judge humanity." Strange's expression was grim. "You want a worthy death? This universe has plenty of candidates." "Galactus," Alucard repeated slowly, tasting the word. "The devourer of worlds, yes. I've sensed something vast in the cosmic dark, something that makes even me feel small." His eyes gleamed. "How delightful." "So we talk," Strange pressed. Alucard looked at each Avenger in turn. The soldier who wouldn't stay down, the genius who built miracles, the widow who'd survived everything the Red Room threw at her, the sorcerer who commanded mysteries. Not masters, not yet, but perhaps allies of convenience. "We talk," Alucard agreed. "But first," he looked at Dracula, still bound by Strange's spells. "A message for your vampire nation, false king. I am not here to rule. I am not here to conquer. I am here to hunt asterisk. Any of your kind who wish to test themselves against me are welcome to try. The rest should stay out of my way." "They'll kill you," Dracula promised. "They'll try. It will be entertaining, for me at least." Alucard tipped his hat mockingly. "Do give them my regards." He turned to Strange. "Lead on, Sorcerer Supreme. Let's discuss these cosmic threats of yours, and perhaps," his grin turned sharp, "find out if any of them can finally grant me the death I've earned." A shield containment team moved in to secure Dracula. The vampire lord's last words before the suppression collar activated were a promise of retribution. Alucard didn't seem concerned. As Strange opened a portal back to the sanctum, Tony Stark's voice came over a private channel to Steve and Natasha. "We're going to regret this, aren't we?" "Probably," Steve replied. "Definitely," Natasha corrected. "Wonderful," Tony muttered. "Add it to the list." The Sanctum Sanctorum, Greenwich Village *. 614 M*. Alucard sat in a leather wingback chair that had probably hosted a dozen Sorcerers Supreme over the centuries, looking entirely too comfortable for someone who just fought a vampire lord and faced down the Avengers. He'd accepted the tea Wung offered with surprising grace, though he hadn't actually drunk any. The cup simply sat on the side table, cooling, while those crimson eyes behind orange-tinted glasses tracked every movement in the room with predatory precision. Dr. Strange sat across from him, the eye of Agamotto closed now, his hands steepled in a gesture that was part meditation, part calculation. The cloak of levitation hung on his shoulders, occasionally rippling as if whispering secrets only it could hear. Between them, a mystical projection displayed a slowly rotating hologram of Alucard's energy signature, an impossibly complex lattice of souls and shadow that made Wong wince every time he glanced at it. 3,624,712, Strange said quietly. That's how many distinct soul signatures I'm detecting. 3.6 million human lives compressed into a singular existence. How? Alucard tilted his head, considering how much to reveal. I consumed them over 5 centuries, every enemy who fell to me, every warrior who challenged me, every victim I deemed worthy of preservation. They're all here. He tapped his chest. All part of me, all available when I need them. That's, Wong struggled for words. That violates every law of mystical conservation. Souls aren't meant to be stored like batteries. They're supposed to move on, reincarnate, join the cosmic cycle. What you're describing is metaphysical hoarding on a scale that should have attracted the attention of every death deity in existence. Oh, it did, Alucard said cheerfully. Death herself came calling once. We had a lovely conversation. She found me fascinating. I found her disappointingly unable to actually claim me. We parted on good terms, I think. She promised we'd meet again when the universe ended. Strange and Wong exchanged glances. Death, Strange said carefully. Capital D, the actual cosmic entity. Is there another? And she just let you continue existing. She found my condition amusing. I'm neither alive nor dead. I exist in a state that technically shouldn't be possible. For a cosmic entity who embodies the concept of mortality, I represent a fascinating paradox. Alucard's grin widened. She said I was delightfully persistent and that she looked forward to collecting me eventually, though she admitted she wasn't sure how to accomplish it. Strange pinched the bridge of his nose. Of course, because why would anything about this situation be simple? Where's the fun in simple? Alucard replied. Before Strange could respond, a portal of crimson light tore open in the sanctum sitting room. Not Strange's golden mystical portals. This was rawer, angrier, edged with dark magic that made the protective wards around the building scream warnings. A figure stepped through. She was tall, aristocratic, beautiful in the way that poisonous flowers are beautiful. Pale skin, dark hair cascading over shoulders draped in a black dress that seemed to absorb light. Eyes that glowed with the same crimson as Alucard's. Power radiated from her in waves, old power, refined through centuries, belonging to someone who'd mastered both magic and vampirism to degrees that made lesser practitioners weep. Dracula sends his regards, she said, voice carrying Eastern European accent and absolute contempt, and his daughter sends her curiosity. Wong's hand moved to a defensive position. Strange's fingers twitched, ready to cast. The cloak of levitation spread slightly, preparing to defend its wearer. Alucard simply looked at the newcomer and laughed. Lilith, Strange said, not taking his eyes off the vampire sorceress. This is neutral ground. You know the rules. Rules, Lilith Dracula repeated mockingly. The Sorcerer Supreme speaks of rules while harboring the creature that broke my father's wrist and humiliated him before the Avengers. Interesting interpretation of neutrality. Your father attacked first, Strange countered. Territorial aggression, he violated. I don't care about rules or violations, Lilith interrupted. She turned her full attention to Alucard, who had risen from his chair with theatrical slowness. I care about the impossible being sitting in the Sorcerer Supreme's sanctum, drinking tea like a civilized creature instead of the abomination his soul count suggests. Abomination, Alucard mused. Technically accurate, I appreciate precision in insults. He executed a mocking half-bow. Alucard, charmed, I'm sure. And you are Dracula's daughter. I must say you're significantly more impressive than your father. He smelled of virus and cheap power. You smell of genuine magic. Dark magic, certainly, but there's artistry there. Lilith's eyes narrowed. Flattery won't save you. I wasn't trying to be saved, merely making an observation. You've actually earned your power, studied for it, sacrificed for it. Your father was made vampire by accident, infected, transformed, elevated beyond his mortal station by external forces. But you, Alucard's grin turned genuinely appreciative. You chose this, pursued it, mastered it. I respect that. Your respect means nothing to me. Doesn't it? Then why are you here instead of sending an army of lesser vampires? Alucard stepped closer and the temperature dropped. You're curious. You want to know what I am, how I work, whether I'm threat or opportunity. And his voice dropped to that multitonal bass. Whether I can be controlled. Everything can be controlled, Lilith said, with sufficient power and proper application. Then by all means, try. The magical assault was instant and devastating. Lilith's hands moved in patterns too fast for normal perception, dark magic erupting in geometric configurations that would have reduced a normal vampire to ash. Binding spells, domination hexes, soul-ripping curses designed specifically to tear the consciousness from undead flesh. She'd been preparing these since the moment reports of Alucard reached Vampire Nation territories. Every spell was tailored, refined, perfected. They struck Alucard like waves against a mountain. The binding spells wrapped around him, thousands of mystical chains that should have frozen him in place. The domination hexes crashed against his psyche like battering rams. The soul-ripping curses dove into his core, seeking to tear his essential self from his body. Alucard stood perfectly still and smiled. Impressive, he said as Lilith's magic surrounded him in a cocoon of dark power. You're significantly more skilled than the Sorcerer Supreme. His spells were powerful but crude. Yours are elegant, precise. You've studied under masters, haven't you? Real masters of the dark arts, not the pretenders and hedge wizards who usually. One of the binding chains shattered. Then another. Then all of them simultaneously, exploding outward in a shower of mystical backlash that sent Lilith stumbling backward. Strange's hands moved instantly, erecting a barrier to protect her from her own rebounding magic. Call themselves dark sorcerers, Alucard finished calmly, but you're trying to dominate a singular consciousness, and I am not singular. His eyes blazed crimson, and for just a moment Lilith saw them. The millions, every soul he'd consumed, starring out from behind those eyes, a vast and terrible chorus of the damned. You can't dominate 3 million voices, Alucard explained conversationally. You can't bind 3 million wills. You can't rip out 3 million souls simultaneously. You'd need to be 3 million times more powerful than you are. And you, for all your impressive skills, are still just one person. Lilith recovered her composure with visible effort. Then, I'll find another way. I'm sure you will. You strike me as persistent. I appreciate that quality. Alucard returned to his chair and picked up his tea, still didn't drink it. But perhaps instead of trying to destroy or control me, you might consider a different approach. Which is? Conversation, trade, information exchange. Alucard gestured to an empty chair. I'm new to this reality. I don't know its rules, its major players, its threats and opportunities. You, on the other hand, have existed here for centuries. You know things I don't, and I," his grin turned sly, "know things you'd very much like to learn. Such as how to transcend the virus, how to become a true vampire instead of an infected human, how to stop being what happened to you and start being what you choose to be." Alucard leaned forward slightly. "I can teach you to consume souls, to store them, to access their power and knowledge. I can show you how to exist in multiple locations simultaneously, how to regenerate from conceptual damage, how to make yourself truly immortal, not just very hard to kill." The room went very quiet. Strange broke the silence. "Absolutely not. I'm not allowing." "You're not allowing." Alucard's tone didn't change, but something in the air shifted, became colder, heavier. "Sorcerer Supreme, I like you. I genuinely do. But you don't dictate what I can or cannot teach. You don't have that authority over me. I have authority over mystical threats to this dimension. And I'm not threatening this dimension. I'm offering to educate someone who already exists here, someone who's already a vampire, someone who's already practicing dark magic. I'm simply offering to help her be better at it. So she can be more dangerous," Wang interjected. "So she can be more powerful, Alucard corrected. "There's a difference. A dangerous fool is just destructive. A powerful master is potentially useful." Lilith had been listening to this exchange with calculating intensity. "What do you want in return?" "Information, access, safe passage through vampire territories without constant attacks from your father's subjects." And Alucard paused. "Entertainment, I'm bored, Lilith, desperately, terribly bored. This world has threats, yes, but it also has structure, rules, bureaucracy. I need chaos. I need conflict. I need worthy opponents. If you can provide those things, we can come to an arrangement. You want me to find people for you to fight. I want you to point me at problems that need solving through overwhelming violence. Surely Vampire Nation has enemies, rivals, threats that conventional approaches can't handle." Lilith considered this, glanced at Strange, who looked like he wanted to protest but couldn't find solid legal ground, looked back at Alucard. "There are threats," she admitted slowly. "Things my father won't move against because they're too dangerous, too unpredictable, too likely to result in unacceptable casualties." "Perfect. Those are exactly the kinds of problems I'm designed to solve. And in exchange, you teach me soul absorption. I teach you everything I know about transcendent vampirism, how to go from infected human to genuine Nosferatu, how to become conceptual instead of merely physical. It will take time, decades probably, and it will require sacrifices you might not be willing to make, but if you're serious about mastering your nature." Alucard's grin was sharp. "I'm an excellent teacher." Strange stood. "This is a terrible idea." "Probably," Alucard agreed. "Definitely," Lilith added, "but I'm interested." "Of course you are," Wang muttered. A new voice interrupted from the doorway. "Well, this is cozy. The Sorcerer Supreme, a vampire lord's daughter, and the interdimensional monster who's been giving S.H.I.E.L.D. nightmares. Anyone mind if I join the party?" Everyone turned. Blade stood in the sanctum's entrance, long coat dusting the floor, sword strapped to his back, firearms visible under his jacket. His eyes, protected by his signature sunglasses, fixed on Alucard with the intensity of someone who'd spent his entire life hunting vampires and had just encountered something that broke all his understanding of the species. "Blade," Strange said, "I didn't summon you." "Didn't need to. Vampire activity in the Bronx. Massive mystical disturbance. Reports of a red-coated figure fighting Dracula to a standstill. I investigate vampire problems, that's what I do. He stepped fully into the room, and every movement was coiled violence waiting for permission to explode. So, you're the new player, Alucard. Eric Brooks, Alucard replied, surprising everyone by knowing Blade's actual name. The Daywalker, half vampire, half human, immune to most vampiric weaknesses, enhanced strength, speed, healing. You've dedicated your existence to hunting my kind. How wonderfully obsessive. How did you? I can taste it on you. The virus, the human genetics fighting it, the unique hybrid nature that makes you neither one thing nor the other. It's fascinating. You're what happens when infection and immunity fight to a draw. Blade's hand moved to his sword. I hunt vampires, that's what I do. That's all I do. You're a vampire, do the math. I'm not a vampire in the sense you mean. I don't carry a virus. I'm not infected. I'm something older, more fundamental. I'm a concept given form. Alucard stood, and despite being shorter than Blade, somehow seemed to loom. But by all means, if you want to try hunting me, I welcome the attempt. It's been a tedious morning. I could use the exercise. Blade Strange interjected sharply. The sanctum is neutral ground, no violence. He's killed people, I saw the reports. 5 dead in Hell's Kitchen. 5 criminals, Alucard corrected. 5 predators who were in the process of victimizing an innocent. I simply finished them faster than you would have. I don't kill unless absolutely necessary. How admirably restrained. I kill when it's efficient. We have different philosophies. Perhaps we should compare methodologies, violently, in a location where the Sorcerer Supreme won't complain about the property damage. The tension in the room ratcheted to breaking point. Then Blade did something unexpected. He laughed. Not a friendly laugh, a dark, bitter sound that carried decades of frustration and violence. You want to fight me? Fine, but not here, not now. He looked at Strange. You keeping him contained. Attempting to establish communication and parameters. Strange replied diplomatically. Good luck with that. I've met ancient vampires before. They don't do parameters. They do predation and power games, and he looked back at Alucard. Psychological warfare designed to make you underestimate them before they rip your throat out. You know us so well, Alucard said delightedly. I think we're going to be wonderful enemies, Mr. Brooks. Count on it. A phone buzzed. Strange pulled out his mobile. Even Sorcerer Supreme needed to stay connected and frowned at the screen. Maria Hill, S.H.I.E.L.D. wants a status update. Tell them I'm cooperating, Alucard suggested. Are you? I'm sitting here drinking tea instead of painting the city red. That's cooperation by my standards. Your standards are concerning. Before Strange could respond, every ward in the sanctum screamed simultaneously, not the gentle warnings from earlier. Full alarm. Reality breach level threat detection. Wang's hands moved instantly to defensive positions. Something's trying to force entry through the dimensional barriers. Something big. The air in the center of the sitting room split. Not a portal, a tear. Reality itself ripping open like fabric, and through the wound stepped something that made even Alucard's perpetual grin falter slightly. The demon was 12 feet tall, wrapped in flames that burned without heat, radiating power that made the sanctum's foundations groan. Horns curved from a skull that was part human, part insectoid, part something that belonged in nightmares. When it spoke, the voice came from everywhere and nowhere, resonating in bones and teeth. I sense a new soul collection, millions compressed, delicious. I claim them for Mephisto's realm. Strange's hands blazed with power. You dare breach the sanctum, the accords forbid. Mephisto CARES, not for accords when prey this valuable appears. The vampire BELONGS to hell. I belong to no one, Alucard said, and his voice carried genuine offense. And I certainly don't belong to a lower-tier demon playing messenger for an entity who doesn't even have the courage to come claim me personally. The demon turned its full attention to Alucard. Lower tier, I am Blackheart, son of Mephisto, Prince OF. A prince, Alucard interrupted. Not even the king. How disappointing. Tell your father that if he wants my souls, he's welcome to come take them. Personally, I've always wondered what a demon lord tastes like. Blackheart's flames intensified. You dare. I do, frequently. It's one of my favorite hobbies. Alucard's form began to shift, shadows deepening around him, that army of souls stirring beneath his skin. Now, you've interrupted what was becoming a fascinating conversation. I'm going to give you 3 seconds to leave. If you're still here after that, I'm going to find out if demon princes are more entertaining opponents than vampire lords. Alucard Strange warned. Blackheart is a Class 7 demonic threat. He's powerful enough to bore me to tears if he monologues much longer, Alucard finished. 1. Blackheart's claws extended, each one the size of a short sword. I will drag you to hell and feast on asterisk. 2. Blade stepped back, hand on his sword. Lilith moved to a defensive position, dark magic already gathering. Wang started pulling protective talismans from his robes. You cannot threaten A. 3. Alucard moved. Not the casual speed he'd displayed before. This was the speed of something that had existed for centuries and had learned to make every millisecond count. He crossed the distance between himself and Blackheart in less time than it took for photons to cross the room. His hand, transformed into something with too many fingers, too many joints, all wrong angles and impossible geometry, plunged directly into Blackheart's chest. The demon prince froze. Let me explain something, Alucard said, voice gone cold and ancient and absolutely merciless. I have consumed the souls of 3,624,712 humans. Each one fought me, each one lost, each one became part of me. And you, he twisted his hand. Blackheart screamed, a sound that shattered windows across 3 blocks. Are going to become number 3,624,713. Wait, Strange's hands moved in binding patterns. You can't consume a demon prince. The mystical backlash alone would. Would what? Alucard looked over his shoulder at Strange, and those crimson eyes held something that might have been curiosity. Kill me. I've been trying to die for centuries. If consuming this pompous messenger causes me harm, I'll consider it a bonus. He pulled. Blackheart's essence, the core of what made the demon prince an individual entity rather than just infernal energy, tore free from his form with a sound like reality screaming. The demon's physical manifestation began to dissolve, flames guttering, flesh melting into sulfurous smoke. Father, Blackheart's voice was fatting desperate. Father, help me, he's. The sanctum's wards suddenly blazed with power that made even Strange step back. A presence pressed against reality itself, vast and terrible and utterly furious. Mephisto. Not physically present, the sanctum's protections were too strong for that. but his attention focused on this location like a magnifying glass focusing sunlight, hot enough to burn. "Release my son, asterisk," a voice echoed from beyond, carrying the weight of eons and the authority of someone who'd ruled Hell's dimensions since before humanity discovered fire. Alucard paused, considered, then looked at the rapidly dissolving demon prince in his grip. "No," he said simply, and consumed Blackheart entirely. The demon prince's scream cut off mid-note. The sulfurous smoke was sucked into Alucard's form like water down a drain. The infernal essence, the demonic power, the fragment of Mephisto's own being that had birthed Blackheart, all of it vanished into the vampire's impossible soul collection. Silence. Then Alucard burped delicately. "Excuse me, demons are very rich, like eating dark chocolate after a light salad." "You just," Strange's voice was faint, "you just consumed Mephisto's son, in my sanctum, during peace talks. You just declared war on one of the most powerful entities in the mystical realms." "Did I?" Alucard seemed genuinely curious. "I thought I just eliminated an annoyance who interrupted our conversation." He tilted his head. "Is that not how things work here? In my experience, if someone tries to claim you for hell, you're well within your rights to eat them." The pressure on reality intensified. Mephisto's presence grew heavier, hotter, more furious. "This is not over, vampire." "I certainly hope not," Alucard called back cheerfully. "Do come visit personally next time. I've always wanted to see if I could consume a proper demon lord. It would be a fascinating experiment." The presence vanished like a snuffed candle, leaving only the lingering scent of sulfur and cosmic rage. Everyone in the sanctum stared at Alucard. "What?" He looked around innocently. "He started it." Lilith laughed, actually laughed, a sound of genuine delight. "You magnificent lunatic. You've been in this universe less than 6 hours and you've already made an eternal enemy of Mephisto." "I make enemies easily," Alucard admitted. "It's a gift." Blade shook his head slowly. "You're going to get everyone killed." "Only if they stand too close when things get interesting." Strange sat down heavily, the weight of what just happened settling on him. Maria Hill is going to have an aneurysm. Tony Stark is going to build 3 new contingency weapons, and Mephisto is going to dedicate significant resources to destroying you. "Sounds like Tuesday," Alucard replied. He settled back into his chair and finally took a sip of his tea, made a face. "This has gone cold. Do you have anything stronger, preferably type Ob negative?" "I'm not serving you blood in my sanctum," Strange said flatly. "Your loss. I'm an excellent judge of vintage." Wong cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should discuss containment, protocols, rules of engagement, something to prevent you from starting an interdimensional war every time someone annoys you." "Where's the fun in that?" Alucard asked. But he was smiling, and for the first time since arriving in this strange new reality, he felt something approaching satisfaction. This world had threats, real threats, cosmic entities who might actually pose a challenge, might actually give him the worthy death he'd been seeking. "Very well," he said. "Let's discuss protocols. I make no promises to follow them, but I'll listen. It's only polite after all." Strange pulled up a holographic display showing S.H.I.E.L.'s proposed supernatural containment frameworks. Blade pulled up a chair, still radiating distrust. Lilith watched with calculating interest. Wong started preparing fresh tea. And in Hell's darkest dimension, Mephisto began planning elaborate revenge against the vampire who'd consumed his son. It was going to be an interesting week. Avengers Tower, Manhattan ***2, 4:47 p.m. same day. The conference room on the 85th floor of Avengers Tower was designed to host world leaders, alien diplomats, and occasionally Norse gods with property damage problems. The table was reinforced vibranium steel composite. The windows were triple-layered smart glass that could withstand Hulk-level impacts. The room itself was shielded against telepathic intrusion, magical scrying, and unauthorized recording, none of which made the current meeting any less tense. Maria Hill stood at the head of the table, holographic displays floating around her showing incident reports, casualty figures, energy readings, and surveillance footage that got progressively more alarming with each slide. To her left sat Captain America, shield propped against his chair, expression carved from granite. To her right, Tony Stark leaned back in his custom ergonomic chair, fingers steepled, arc reactor glowing through his Black Sabbath t-shirt. Around the table, Black Widow arms crossed, Hawkeye cleaning his bow with mechanical precision, Bruce Banner looking uncomfortable in a room full of people discussing violence, War Machine still in partial armor from his patrol, Falcon wings retracted but ready, Scarlet Witch fingers occasionally sparking with red energy as her anxiety manifested, and at the far end Nick Fury himself, eye patch reflecting the holographic light, presence heavy enough to make the air feel thick. Doctor Strange stood near the windows, the cloak of levitation hanging over his shoulders, expression grim. Wong stood behind him, silent but alert. And in the corner, looking distinctly out of place among the heroes, Blade leaned against the wall, arms crossed, radiating the kind of controlled violence that made even trained Avengers nervous. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," Fury said, voice carrying the kind of calm that preceded explosions. "In the past 12 hours, an entity calling itself Alucard has arrived via dimensional breach, killed 5 people." "5 criminals," Strange interjected. "Killed 5 people, Fury continued without pause. "Engaged Daredevil and Spider-Man in combat, evaded shield containment, fought the Lord of Earth's vampires to a standstill, shattered mystical bindings cast by the Sorcerer Supreme, consumed Mephisto's son." He paused, eye fixing on Strange. "Consumed Mephisto's son, and is currently residing in your sanctum as a guest, while you attempt to negotiate behavioral parameters." "That's accurate," Strange admitted. "And you didn't think to inform us before the demon-eating part." "Things escalated quickly." "Things always escalate quickly." Fury slammed a hand on the table. The holographic displays flickered. "That's why we have protocols, procedures, communication networks, so that when an extinction-level vampire shows up and starts declaring war on Hell, we can coordinate a response instead of reading about it in the incident reports." "To be fair," Tony interjected, "Strange did send a priority alert after the Blackheart incident. We got it approximately 30 seconds after every mystical alarm in North America started screaming about demonic dissolution and reality fractures." 30 seconds, Fury repeated. "Wonderful. That's just enough time to start panicking before we die." "Director," Steve said quietly, the voice of reason trying to steer the conversation somewhere productive, "we need to focus on next steps. What are we dealing with exactly? Strange, your assessment." Strange waved a hand, and the holographic display shifted to show a spectral reconstruction of Alucard, the same one he'd shown Wong earlier. The image rotated slowly, revealing layers of mystical energy, soul signatures, and reality-warping anomalies that made Bruce Banner lean forward with scientific fascination. "This is Alucard," Strange began. "As far as I can determine, he's a genuine vampire in the classical, mystical sense, not infected with the virus that creates Marvel's vampire population. His nature is fundamentally different. Where our vampires are humans transformed by biological contagion, he's something older, conceptual. He exists as much as an idea as he does a physical being." "You're saying he's what?" Clint asked. "A metaphor with teeth." "More like a myth made manifest," Strange corrected. "He contains approximately 3.6 million absorbed souls, each one he's consumed over 5 centuries. They're not destroyed, they're preserved within him, their power and knowledge available for his use. It makes him functionally unkillable by conventional means. You can't kill him because he's not really one being. He's 3 million beings pretending to be one." "So how do we stop him?" Natasha asked, cutting to the tactical heart of the matter. "We don't," Strange said bluntly. "Not with anything currently in our arsenal. I consulted with the Ancient One's texts, ran probabilities through the time stone carefully. I'm not making that mistake again. The entity is powerful enough that direct confrontation would require either cosmic-level intervention or weapons we don't have access to." "The Infinity Stones," Banner suggested. "Maybe, if we had all 6 and someone capable of wielding them without dying. Which we don't, and even if we did, using cosmic power to eliminate one vampire seems like apocalyptic overkill." "What about Thor?" Steve asked. "Asgardian magic is different from Earth magic, if we contacted." "Thor's currently off-world helping rebuild after the Ragnarok situation," Tony interrupted. "And even if we could reach him, I'm not sure, hey, come home and fight a vampire is going to be high on his priority list. He's dealing with refugee crises and political restructuring." "Carol Danvers," Rhodey suggested. "Also off-world, Kree-Skrull's situation in the Andromeda sector." Tony pulled up a star map showing Captain Marvel's last known position, approximately 2 million light-years away. She'd need at least a week to get back even if we sent an emergency beacon. Fury leaned back, regarding the holographic Alucard with his one good eye. "So what you're telling me is we have an unkillable vampire with the power of 3 million people, the ability to eat demons, and enough attitude to declare war on hell, and our primary response option is ask him nicely to behave." "Essentially," Strange confirmed. "I hate everything about this situation." "That makes 2 of us," Strange muttered. "3, Blade added from his corner. "For the record, I hunt vampires, that's my entire life. And I'm telling you, this thing isn't like anything I've encountered. Dracula's dangerous because he's old, powerful, and strategic. This Alucard is dangerous because he wants Asterisk to be challenged. He's seeking conflict, looking for something strong enough to kill him." "A death wish." Steve's expression shifted to something like understanding. He knew something about wanting to rest after too long at war. "More like a warrior's wish," Blade corrected. "He doesn't want to just die. He wants to be Asterisk defeated Asterisk. There's a difference. He spent 500 years getting stronger, consuming enemies, surviving impossible situations. Now he's bored. He's looking for worthy opponents, and he thinks this universe might have them." "Wonderful," Tony said. "A suicidal vampire with cosmic tier power looking for someone to give him a good death. That's not worrying at all." Wanda spoke for the first time, her accented voice cutting through the discussion. "I touched his mind, briefly, when we confronted him in the Bronx." Everyone turned to look at her. "It was," Vast, like looking into a stadium full of people all talking at once, all part of the same thought. But underneath it, there was something else. Loneliness. He misses someone who commanded him, someone he served. He mentioned a master, Steve recalled. Said he was searching for someone worthy of his loyalty. He's a weapon looking for a wielder, Natasha observed, her tactical mind already analyzing angles. That's potentially useful. If we can't destroy him, maybe we can aim him. At what? Fury demanded. What problem do we have that requires unleashing an unkillable vampire? The room went quiet. Then Tony spoke, voice carefully controlled. There's always something. We've got Hydra remnants still operating underground. AIM developing bioweapons in black sites. The Hand is performing resurrection rituals in Cambodia. Dormammu is constantly probing dimensional barriers. There are always threats that conventional heroes can't or won't handle because the moral cost is too high. You're suggesting we weaponize him, Steve said, and there was steel in his voice. Point him at enemies and let him do what he does. I'm suggesting we recognize reality, Tony countered. He's here. He's powerful. He's not leaving. And based on Strange's assessment, we can't make him leave. So we either let him rampage freely until he accidentally starts a war we can't win, or we give him targets that deserve what he can do. That's a slippery slope, Banner said quietly. Today it's Hydra, tomorrow it's political enemies. That's how societies justify atrocities, by convincing themselves the targets deserve it. I'm not talking about political enemies, Tony said. I'm talking about extinction-level threats, things that keep you up at night. Thanos, if he ever comes back. The Celestials, if they decide humanity failed their test. Galactus, when he inevitably gets hungry again. He looked around the table. We barely survived the last cosmic crisis. The next one might finish us. Having something genuinely dangerous on our side might be the difference between survival and extinction. Or it might be the thing that causes our extinction, Steve countered. We don't know him, don't understand him, don't know if we can trust him. Recruiting him would be like recruiting me, Natasha interrupted softly. Everyone looked at her. I was a weapon, she continued, meeting Steve's eyes. Trained, conditioned, aimed at targets by people who didn't care about collateral damage. You recruited me anyway. Gave me a chance to be something other than what I was made to be. Trusted me when you had no logical reason to. That's different, Steve said. Is it? I'd killed more people than most of this room combined. Had blood on my hands that will never wash clean. But you saw potential, saw someone who could choose to be better. She looked at the holographic Alucard. Maybe he's the same. Or maybe he's a monster wearing a gentleman's smile, Clint said. Nat, you wanted to change, wanted redemption. This thing consumed 3 million people, ate a demon prince like it was an appetizer, laughed while doing it. That's not someone looking for redemption. No, Strange agreed, but it might be someone looking for purpose. He served a master for a century. Someone named Integra Hellsing, according to information I've extrapolated from his comments. She commanded him, directed him, gave him targets and constraints. Without her, he's... Strange paused, searching for the right word. Untethered. A loose cosmic nuke, Fury summarized. Perfect. What did Dracula's daughter want? Rhodey asked. Hill's report said she showed up at the sanctum. Lilith came to assess him, Strange replied. I suspect she reported back to Dracula. The vampire nation is probably deciding right now whether to ally with him, eliminate him, or stay the hell away from him. Smart money's on option 3, Blade muttered. A holographic display lit up, showing an incoming priority call. Maria Hill touched a control, and a video feed opened showing the interior of a SHIELD operations center. The analyst, the same one from earlier, looked notably more stressed than he had 12 hours ago. "Commander Hill, we have a situation. Multiple situations. Hydra cell in Munich just went dark. Complete communications blackout. Last transmission mentioned Red Shadow before the line cut. Interpol is reporting similar incidents at 3 known AIM facilities across Europe. No survivors. Massive blood loss in all casualties." And the analyst swallowed hard. "There's video." "Show me," Hill ordered. The feed switched to grainy security footage from what looked like an underground laboratory. Men in yellow hazmat suits, AIM technicians, worked on something the camera couldn't quite capture. Then the lights went out. When they flickered back on 3 seconds later, Alucard stood in the center of the room. The audio was distorted, but his voice carried clearly. "I was informed you were developing biological weapons, viruses designed to target enhanced individuals. How delightfully ambitious. Let me show you what an *real virus can do." What followed was 11 seconds of violence so overwhelming that even hardened Avengers looked away. When the lights stabilized, Alucard was gone. 23 AIM technicians were dead, and scrawled on the wall in blood was a message: "You're welcome, A." The video ended. Silence filled the conference room. "He's hunting," Blade said flatly. "Going after vampire hunting targets and enhanced threat targets simultaneously. Dracula probably fed him intelligence on supernatural problems to keep him occupied and away from vampire territories. And someone," he looked at Strange, "probably mentioned Hydra and AIM as acceptable targets." Strange had the grace to look uncomfortable. "I may have mentioned, in passing, during our conversation, that there were organizations developing bioweapons and researching enhanced individuals for unethical purposes. I didn't tell him to attack them. I was simply providing contextual information about this reality's threat landscape." "And he took that as permission," Steve said. "Or as a suggestion," Tony added. "Either way, he's self-tasking. That's actually worse than if we'd given him formal orders. At least then we'd have oversight." Another alert. This time multiple feeds lit up simultaneously. Reports from London, Prague, Istanbul, Shanghai. The same pattern: Hydra facilities, AIM laboratories, hand training compounds, all dark, all casualties, all with the same calling card: "You're welcome, A." "He's hitting 6 targets simultaneously," Maria Hill said, voice tight with professional alarm. "How is that possible?" "He exists in multiple locations at once," Strange explained. "His omnipresent nature allows him to split his consciousness across different shadows. He could be conducting a dozen operations in different cities simultaneously and still maintain full awareness of each." "That's terrifying," Bruce said. "That's useful," Tony countered. "He's doing in one night what would take us months of coordinated operations. Yes, it's messy. Yes, it's unsanctioned. But he's eliminating genuine threats." "Without trial," Steve said. "Without due process. Without giving anyone a chance to surrender." "Hydra doesn't surrender," Natasha pointed out. "Neither does AIM. They regroup, rebuild, come back worse. Maybe permanent solutions are what's needed." "That's not justice," Steve insisted. "That's execution." "That's war," Fury said quietly. Everyone looked at the director. "And like it or not, we are at war. Not the clean kind with rules and Geneva Conventions. The kind where enhanced individuals, aliens, and now vampires fight over resources and territory and ideology. In that war, having someone willing to do what we can't or won't, he paused, might be the only reason we survive. I can't believe you're endorsing this, Steve said. I'm not endorsing anything. I'm recognizing reality. We have an asset, a dangerous, unpredictable, potentially unstable asset, but an asset nonetheless. The question isn't whether we approve of his methods. The question is, do we try to work with him, or do we spend resources fighting him while real threats continue to operate? The holographic displays updated again, this time with a message, text appearing across all screens simultaneously. Dear Avengers, NOTICED your HAVING a meeting about ME. How flattering. Would attend but AM currently occupied with Hydra leadership in Berlin. They send their REGARDS. Well, they would if they could still speak. If you'd like to discuss employment TERMS, I'm available tomorrow evening. I prefer meetings after dark, professional preference. Also, your coffee in the BRAKROOM is terrible. Fix that. REGARDS. He hacked our systems, Tony said, sounding impressed despite himself. JARVIS, how did he? Unknown, sir. The message appeared simultaneously across all secure networks. No point of intrusion detected. It's as if it simply manifested. Shadow manipulation, Strange said. If he can move through darkness, and computer systems generate electromagnetic fields that create quantum shadows in the processing layers, he might be able to interact with digital systems through those shadows. That's not how computers work, Bruce protested. That's not how computers should work, Strange corrected. But we're dealing with mystical physics, not conventional physics. Normal rules don't apply. Wanda's hand sparked with red energy. He's listening right now. I can feel his presence, watching through the shadows. Everyone's eyes went to the darker corners of the room, the spaces under the table, the gaps between furniture, anywhere light didn't fully penetrate. Alucard, Steve said, addressing the shadows themselves. If you're here, show yourself. Let's talk face to face. For a long moment, nothing. Then from the shadow behind Fury's chair, a voice emerged. That distinctive multi-tonal bass, amused and ancient. I'm always here, Captain. Everywhere there's darkness, everywhere there's shadow. I'm distributed across this entire city now. This tower, your sanctum, Strange. Vampire Nation territories, Dracula. Every shadow I've touched becomes part of my awareness. Convenient, really. Makes eavesdropping so much easier. Fury didn't turn around, didn't flinch, but his hand moved fractionally closer to the weapon Hill knew he kept under the table. You want to negotiate? Fine. Step out where we can see you. Do I want to negotiate? Not particularly, but you seem determined to integrate me into your little superhero collective, so I suppose I should at least hear the pitch. The shadow deepened, thickened, and Alucard emerged from it like someone stepping through a curtain. He materialized behind Fury's chair, close enough that the director would only need to turn his head to make eye contact. The red coat was immaculate despite the reported combat in 6 different cities. The hat was perfectly positioned. The grin was sharp enough to cut. Hello, Avengers, Alucard said pleasantly. Lovely tower, excellent views, terrible coffee though, I wasn't joking about that. Tony stood, arc reactor humming as his armor began to materialize around him, nanites flowing from the housing unit in his chest. You hacked our systems, invaded our headquarters, and now you're criticizing our coffee. Priorities, Mr. Stark. If you're going to fight cosmic threats, you need proper caffeine. What you're serving is barely classified as liquid. Alucard walked around the table slowly, examining each Avenger in turn. Let's see. Captain America, the legend who can't stay down, I respect that. Persistence is admirable. He moved on. Black Widow, Red Room training. Over 30 confirmed kills before you were 20. You and I have similar backgrounds. We might actually get along. Doubt it, Natasha said flatly. Your loss, he continued to Clint. Hawkeye, perfect accuracy with a primitive weapon, charming. Reminds me of longbowmen I knew in the 1400s. They died screaming too. Clint's bow was suddenly in his hands, arrow knocked. Keep talking. Always do. Alucard reached Bruce Banner. Dr. Banner, the man with anger management issues that turn him into a walking natural disaster. Tell me, Doctor, when you transform, do you retain awareness? Or do you become something else entirely? I've always wondered what it's like to have a second self that powerful. Stay away from me, Bruce said, voice tight. No need to be defensive, I'm simply curious. He moved to Wanda, Scarlet Witch, chaos magic, reality manipulation. You touched my mind earlier. Brave, foolish. But brave. I could touch yours in return if you'd like. Show you what 3 million voices sound like from the inside. Red energy flared around Wanda's hands. Try it. Maybe later. Finally, he reached Steve. Captain America, the man everyone trusts, the moral compass, the one who thinks war should be clean and justice should be fair. Alucard leaned down slightly, those crimson eyes meeting Steve's blue ones. The universe isn't fair, Captain. I learned that 500 years ago when I sold my soul for the power to protect my kingdom. You'll learn it too, eventually. The only question is how many people die before you do. Steve stood and, despite being several inches shorter, somehow matched Alucard's presence. I've seen war, real war. War where good people died for bad reasons and victory tasted like ashes. I know the universe isn't fair, but that doesn't mean we stop trying to make it better. How inspirational. Alucard's tone was mocking, but something in his eyes suggested genuine interest. And what happens when trying to make it better isn't enough? When the threats are too big, too powerful, too cosmic for your noble ideals to touch? What then, Captain? Then we find another way. There isn't always another way. There is if you look hard enough. They stared at each other for a long moment. Then Alucard laughed, a genuine sound, not the theatrical mockery he'd used before. You actually believe that? How refreshing. Most people who have lived as long as you've fought lose their optimism, but you're still clinging to it like a life preserver in a storm. He straightened. Very well, I'm intrigued. What are you proposing? Fury took control of the conversation. You operate alone, you're a walking international incident. Every kill without sanction is ammunition for governments who want to shut down enhanced individuals entirely. Registration acts, inhibitor collars, internment camps. We've been down that road. It ends badly. For whom? For everyone, including you. Because if governments decide you're too dangerous to exist, they'll find ways to make you not exist. Orbital strikes, nuclear options, calling in favors from cosmic entities who owe them. You're powerful, but you're not invincible. Aren't I? Alucard's tone was challenging. Nothing is invincible, Fury said flatly. Everything has a weakness. Everything can be destroyed if you apply enough force or the right leverage. What we're offering is an alternative. Work with us, under parameters, with oversight. In exchange, we provide intelligence, resources, and legal cover for your operations. You want me as an Avenger? Alucard sounded amused. Hell no, Tony said. You're nowhere near ready for that, but we could use you as a consultant, specialized operations, the kind of threats that require unconventional solutions. Deniable operations, Natasha translated. Things we can't officially touch but need handled anyway. Black ops for the superhero community, Alucard said. How delightfully hypocritical. How pragmatic, Fury corrected. We live in a complex world, sometimes that requires complex solutions. Alucard walked to the window, looking out at New York spread below him. Millions of lives, millions of heartbeats, a city that never slept, full of prey and predators and everything in between. I had a master, he said quietly, Integra Hellsing. She commanded me for a century, gave me purpose, direction, constraints. Without her, he paused. Without her, I'm just a weapon looking for a war, and that's dangerous for everyone. So accept our terms, Steve said. Work with us. Let us help you find purpose that doesn't involve eating demon princes. The demon prince insulted me, Alucard said. That's different. It really isn't. Alucard turned back to face the assembled heroes. What are your terms? Fury pulled up a holographic contract, surprisingly well prepared for something that should have taken days to draft. You operate under SHIELD oversight for supernatural and enhanced threats. You don't kill without authorization unless in immediate self-defense. You attend mandatory debrief sessions after each operation. You register your abilities in sealed files, classification level 10, but registered. And you don't consume any more demons without explicit approval. That last one is oddly specific. Mephisto has already sent 3 formal complaints through mystical channels, Strange said. Apparently consuming his son violated several interdimensional treaties. We're still trying to sort out the diplomatic fallout. Wonderful. I've started an international incident my first day. Alucard didn't sound particularly concerned. What do I get in return? Intelligence on threats, Maria Hill said. Access to SHIELD databases, legal immunity for sanctioned operations, and she glanced at Fury, who nodded. A chance to fight things that might actually challenge you. We get threats you can't imagine, things from other dimensions, cosmic entities, god-level beings. You want worthy opponents, we can provide targeting data. That got his attention. Go on. Tony pulled up a holographic list. Dormammu, extra-dimensional entity that wants to consume Earth. Tried once, Strange stopped him, but he's persistent. Shumagorath, elder god with tentacles and attitude problems. The Dweller in Darkness, fear entity that feeds on terror. Nightmare, rules the dream dimension, occasionally tries to conquer reality. And those are just the mystical threats. We've also got Kang the Conqueror, who's a time-traveling warlord with technology from the 31st century. Ultron, if he ever comes back. The Skrulls have infiltration technology that could replace Earth's leaders without anyone noticing. And eventually, Fury added quietly, something bigger than all of them, something that makes Thanos look like a warm-up act. The universe has cycles, threats escalate. What worked yesterday won't work tomorrow. We need assets that can escalate with them. New York City, Times Square *. 9:34 p.m., 3 days later. The invasion began without warning. One moment, Times Square pulsed with its usual chaos. Tourists, street performers, advertisements blazing across screens that turned night into artificial day. The next, the sky tore open. Not a portal, not a dimensional rift, a wound. Reality itself split like infected flesh, and through the opening poured creatures that made even hardened New Yorkers scream. Chitori soldiers, the same alien species that had invaded during the Battle of New York, but wrong, changed. Their bodies writhed with black tendrils. Symbiote material merged with their exoskeletons, creating hybrids that moved with terrible intelligence and hunger. "This is Baron Zemo," a voice echoed across every screen in Times Square, every phone, every communication device within a 5-mile radius. "Citizens of New York, you have harbored criminals, protected the so-called Avengers, sheltered monsters like the vampire who destroyed my laboratories. For these crimes, you will be judged." The Chitauri-Symbiote hybrids descended on the crowd. Avengers Tower, Command Center. "How many?" Steve demanded, already in uniform, shield on his arm. "Preliminary count, 200 hostiles," Maria Hill reported. "And they're spreading. Symbiote material is infectious. Anyone they touch becomes part of the hive mind. We're looking at exponential growth if we don't contain this immediately." Tony's armor was already assembling around him. "JARVIS, where's our vampire problem?" "Mr. Alucard's last known location was the Sanctum Sanctorum, sir. Dr. Strange reports he was meditating on the nature of worthy opponents and being insufferably philosophical." "Get him," Steve ordered. "Hill, scramble everyone. Nat Clint Rhodes, you're on evacuation. Wanda, you're with me for crowd control. Tony, air superiority. And somebody tell Banner we need." "Already here," Bruce said, entering at a run. "And yeah, the other guy knows, he's ready." "Then let's move." Times Square, Ground Zero. Alucard materialized from a shadow cast by a burning vehicle, surveying the chaos with detached interest. Civilians fled screaming. The Chitauri-Symbiote hybrids pursued with mechanical efficiency. Already, he could see the infection spreading, people touched by the symbiote material convulsing as the alien organism bonded with their nervous systems. "Fascinating," he murmured. "Zemo found a way to stabilize the symbiote-host bonding process. The Chitori physiology provides structure the symbiotes needed. Quite clever." "Alucard," Captain America's voice cut through the chaos as he landed nearby, having vaulted from a shield transport. "We need containment, not commentary." "Do you? I was rather enjoying watching your city descend into chaos. It's been 3 whole days since something interesting happened." "People are dying." "People are always dying, Captain. That's what they do. It's their most consistent quality." But despite the casual words, Alucard was already moving. His form blurred, and 3 Chitauri-Symbiote hybrids simply ceased to exist, consumed, absorbed, integrated into his soul collection in the space between heartbeats. Iron Man descended from above, repulsors firing in controlled bursts that separated infected civilians from uninfected ones. "Dracula, we need you to, did you just eat those aliens?" "I prefer absorbed, but yes, quite nutritious. The symbiote adds an interesting flavor profile." Alucard drew the casual and jackal, dual-wielding his hand cannons with casual precision. "How many am I authorized to kill?" "As many as necessary." Steve was already engaging, shield deflecting symbiote tendrils while he coordinated civilian evacuation. "But try to save the hosts if possible." How tediously heroic. But Alucard adjusted his tactics. Instead of consuming the hybrids entirely, he began tearing the symbiote material away from the Chitori hosts with surgical precision, each shot placed perfectly to sever the connection without killing the infected. A scream drew his attention. A young woman, college age, phone still clutched in one hand, was cornered by 3 hybrids. The symbiote tendrils reached for her, and Alucard saw the moment of infection begin. He was there before the thought finished forming. The 3 hybrids dissolved into shadow and blood. Alucard caught the woman as she stumbled, steadying her with unexpected gentleness. "Run," he said simply. She stared at him, at the red coat, the impossible grin, the eyes that glowed crimson behind orange-tinted glasses. "You're the vampire," she whispered, "the one who fought Dracula, who ate the demon. Guilty on all counts. Now run before I remember I haven't fed today." She ran. "You're getting soft," Tony observed, blasting 2 more hybrids out of the sky. "I'm getting bored," Alucard corrected. "These things are too weak. Where's the main threat? Where's Zemo?" As if in answer, the sky tore open wider. Through the expanded rift came something massive. A Chitori-Leviathan, the city block-sized bioship that had terrorized New York during the first invasion, but transformed. Its entire body was encased in symbiote material, black and writhing, hundreds of feet long, moving with predatory intelligence that made the original look like a mindless beast. "That's new," Tony said quietly. The Leviathan opened its mouth, and instead of roaring, it spoke. Zemo's voice, amplified through the symbiote network. "You should have stayed out of my affairs, vampire. Now you'll watch this city burn." Alucard looked up at the massive creature and smiled. "Captain," he said, voice gone cold and ancient, "I'm going to need you to evacuate everyone within a 3-block radius." "Why, what are you?" "Because I'm releasing the restraints, and when I do, people who see it tend to go mad." Steve's eyes widened. "How many restraints?" "All of them." "Alucard, we can handle this without." "No," Alucard interrupted, and for the first time there was no mockery in his voice. No theatrical amusement, just certainty. "You can't. That thing is infectious on a massive scale. Every second it exists, the threat grows exponentially. You need overwhelming force applied immediately. You need something that doesn't hesitate, doesn't hold back, doesn't care about collateral damage beyond civilian casualties." "You need a monster," Steve said quietly. "Exactly." Alucard looked at the captain and something passed between them. Understanding, maybe, or acceptance. "You have 2 minutes to clear the area. I suggest you use them." Steve hit his comm. "All units fall back 3 blocks. Civilian evacuation priority alpha. Wanda, I need barriers. Tony, air support for evacuation. Move now." The Avengers responded instantly, coordinating with the precision of a team that had saved the world multiple times. Wanda's chaos magic created shimmering red barriers, channeling civilians away from the impact zone. Tony and Rhodes worked in perfect synchronization, using repulsors to guide the fleeing crowds. 90 seconds later, the area was clear. Alucard stood alone in the center of Times Square, facing the Chitori-Leviathan that circled above like a predatory god. "Release restraint," he said quietly. "Level 3, Level 2, Level 1. His shadow began to spread, not naturally, not following the laws of light and physics. It poured outward like liquid night, covering buildings, streets, abandoned vehicles. Everything it touched turned black, absolute, a darkness that absorbed light itself. Releasing Control Art Restriction System to Level 0. The shadow erupted. From its depths rose the familiars, not dozens, not hundreds, millions. Every soul Alucard had ever consumed manifested simultaneously. Warriors from 1,000 different eras. Soldiers who'd fought in wars long forgotten. Victims who'd fallen to his hunger across 5 centuries. They rose like a tidal wave of the damned, an army of ghosts and memories and death given temporary form. The Chitori Leviathan dove, symbiote jaws open wide enough to swallow buildings. The familiar army met at midair. What followed wasn't a battle. It was an overwhelming, terrible demonstration of what happened when an unkillable vampire stopped holding back. The familiars swarmed the Leviathan like ants on a carcass, tearing at symbiote flesh, ripping through Chitori armor, pulling the massive creature down through sheer impossible numbers. The Leviathan thrashed, destroying hundreds of familiars with each movement. It didn't matter. For every one destroyed, 10 more manifested. Alucard walked forward calmly and reality bent around him. His form shifted, not to bats or mist, but to something fundamental. The concept of vampirism itself, predation made manifest, the ultimate expression of what he truly was beneath the gentleman's facade. He reached the downed Leviathan and placed his hand on its massive head. "Impressive," he said conversationally. "Zemo managed to bond Chitori and Symbiote into something genuinely dangerous. Under other circumstances, this might have actually threatened your city, but you made one critical error." The Leviathan's mouth opened, Zemo's voice desperate. "What error?" "You assumed I had limits." Alucard consumed the entire Leviathan. Not quickly, not cleanly. He pulled it into himself piece by piece, absorbing the symbiote material, the Chitori biology, the technological components, everything. The creature's screams echoed across dimensions as it was systematically unmade and integrated into Alucard's impossible existence. When it was finished, only Alucard remained, standing in a crater where the Leviathan had been. The familiar army vanished, flowing back into his form. The shadows receded, and Alucard stood in the center of Times Square, coat pristine, hat perfectly positioned, grin sharp as ever. "Threat neutralized," he said into the calm device Tony had given him, a replacement for the one he'd crushed in Latveria. "You can return now." The Avengers converged slowly, weapons ready despite knowing they'd be useless. Steve approached first, the civilians. "Alive, I made sure the familiars avoided them. Well, mostly. There may be some therapy needed. Seeing 3 million ghosts tends to disturb people." "And Zemo?" "Gone." He was controlling the Leviathan remotely, smart enough not to be physically present. Alucard tilted his head. "But I tasted his connection through the symbiote network. I know where he is now. Would you like me to collect him?" "No," Steve said firmly. "We'll handle Zemo through proper channels." How disappointing. I was looking forward to teaching him about consequences. But Alucard didn't argue. "Very well. The immediate threat is ended. Your city is saved. You're welcome." He turned to leave. "Alucard," Tony called. "That level 0 thing, how often can you do that?" "As often as necessary." "Why?" "Because that was terrifying," Tony said bluntly. "And if you can deploy that kind of power whenever you want, we need to recalibrate our entire threat assessment of you." "Probably wise. I've been holding back. Didn't want to alarm you too much." Alucard's grin widened. "But now you understand. When real threats come, the cosmic ones, the extinction-level events, you'll need me at full power. And this was me being restrained." He dissolved into shadow, leaving the Avengers standing in the ruins of Times Square, processing what they'd just witnessed. "We recruited that," Clint said quietly. "Yes," Steve replied. "We're going to regret it." "Probably." "But we needed him," Natasha added. "Unfortunately." Above them, SHIELD surveillance drones captured footage that would be classified at the highest levels and studied by analysts for years to come. trying to understand exactly what kind of entity they'd allied with. And in the shadows, Alucard smiled. The Sanctum Sanctorum, 3 weeks later. The meeting room was crowded. On one side of the ancient table sat the heroes: Captain America, Iron Man, Doctor Strange, Black Widow, and Maria Hill representing S.H.I.E.L.D. On the other side, representatives of Earth's supernatural community: Blade, expression perpetually skeptical; Lilith, Dracula, radiating aristocratic disdain; and conspicuously absent from the vampire delegation, Dracula himself, who'd sent only a tersely worded message declining to attend negotiations with the Pretender. At the head of the table, looking entirely too comfortable in a chair meant for sorcerers, sat Alucard. "Let's establish parameters," Strange began, mystical contracts hovering before each participant. 3 weeks of operational activity, 16 sanctioned missions, 0 civilian casualties, but he looked pointedly at Alucard. 43 unauthorized kills, 12 diplomatic incidents, and 1 formal declaration of blood feud from Mephisto. Mephisto's still angry about his son. Alucard seemed delighted. How wonderfully petty. I thought demon lords were above grudges. They're not, Strange said flatly. Which brings us to the Covenant proposal, a formal binding agreement that defines your operational parameters while preserving your autonomy. Sounds like a leash with extra words, Alucard observed. It's a framework, Steve corrected. You want worthy opponents, we want controlled deployment. This gives us both. Tony pulled up holographic displays. Here's what we're offering: full access to S.H.I.E.L.D. threat databases, priority intelligence on cosmic-level entities, legal immunity for sanctioned operations, a formal position as Supernatural Operations Specialist. We workshop that title for 3 days, you're welcome. And he paused dramatically. Guaranteed deployment against Thanos-level threats should they arise. That got Alucard's attention. Guaranteed. When the next extinction-level crisis comes, your first call. No holding back, no restraints, full level 0 authorization. Tony met his eyes. That's what you want, right? To fight something that might actually kill you. Among other things, Alucard leaned back. And what do you want in return? Restraint for everything below cosmic level, Steve said. No killing humans without explicit authorization. No consuming demons without clearance. No starting interdimensional wars because you're bored. And he slid a document across the table. Submission to oversight by a council consisting of myself, Strange, and 1 representative from Vampire Nation. Absolutely not, Lilith interjected. Vampire Nation will not participate in constraining someone of his power. Too much risk, too little benefit. Then you forfeit input on his operations in your territories, Hill countered. Lilith's eyes narrowed. You wouldn't. We would. He's already operating independently. Either you help establish boundaries or he makes his own. Hill's expression was steel. Your choice. The vampire sorceress looked at Alucard, who simply smiled. She's right, you know. I've been remarkably well behaved, but without structure, without purpose, he shrugged. Who knows what I might do? That's extortion, Lilith hissed. That's negotiation, Tony corrected. Welcome to the superhero business. It's all morally gray areas and uncomfortable alliances. Blade spoke for the first time. I'll do it. Be the vampire representative. Everyone turned to stare. You hate him, Natasha pointed out. I hate all vampires, but Blade struggled for words. He's honest about what he is. No pretense. No trying to pass as human. He's a monster who owns it. I can work with that better than I can with Dracula's political maneuvering. "How touching," Alucard said. "The vampire hunter volunteers to supervise the vampire. There's a wonderful irony there." "I'm not supervising you. I'm making sure when you need killing, I'm there to try." Blade's expression was grim. "Because eventually you'll cross a line, and when you do, I'll be waiting." "I look forward to it." Strange cleared his throat. "If we could return to the actual covenant, the mystical binding requires all parties to consent willingly. No coercion, no deception. You have to want this arrangement." "And if I refuse?" Alucard asked. The room tensed. "Then we find another way," Steve said quietly. "We're not your enemies, Alucard. We're trying to give you what you want: worthy battles, cosmic threats, purpose, while protecting innocent people from collateral damage. That's not unreasonable." Alucard was silent for a long moment, crimson eyes unreadable behind orange-tinted glasses. "I had a master once," he said finally, "Integra Hellsing. She commanded me with absolute authority, never wavered, never compromised. She pointed me at enemies and I destroyed them. It was simple, clean. I knew my purpose every moment of every century I served her." "You miss her," Wanda said softly. "I miss the certainty, the structure, knowing exactly what I was meant to be." He looked around the table. "You're asking me to accept a committee instead of a master, multiple voices instead of one, consensus instead of command." "Yes," Steve confirmed. "It sounds exhausting." "It is," Tony agreed. "Welcome to democracy. It's terrible and inefficient and somehow the best system we've found." Alucard laughed, genuine amusement, not theatrical mockery. "Very well, I'll accept your covenant with one condition." "Name it," Strange said. "When the truly worthy opponent arrives, when something cosmic and terrible comes to end your world, you let me face it alone first. Give me one chance to find the death I've been seeking. If I fail, if I fall, if I'm finally destroyed." His grin was sharp. "Then you can save the day with your teamwork and noble sacrifices. But let me have that first attempt. Let me see if 500 years of accumulated death is enough." The heroes exchanged glances. "That's suicide," Steve said. "That's hope," Alucard corrected. "The only kind I have left." Strange's hands moved through mystical patterns, and the contracts began to glow. "The Covenant accepts individual challenges to cosmic threats, provided civilian evacuation is complete and Avengers backup is on standby. Is that acceptable?" "Perfect." "Then we have agreement." The contracts flared brilliant gold, magical binding settling over all participants like invisible chains. "The Covenant is sealed. Alucard of Hellsing, you are hereby recognized as Earth's supernatural operations specialist, with all rights and restrictions therein." The light faded. Alucard stood, adjusting his hat. "Well then, I suppose I should start earning my keep. Any immediate threats requiring a monster's attention?" "Actually, yes." Hill pulled up a holographic display showing a dimensional rift opening in the Arctic. Unknown entities emerging. Energy signatures suggest demonic origin, but higher tier than anything we've cataloged. SHIELD teams are en route, but they're outmatched. How delightful. I was getting bored with paperwork. Alucard turned to leave, then paused. "Captain, thank you for trying to give a monster purpose. It's more kindness than I deserve." "Everyone deserves purpose," Steve replied. "Even monsters." Alucard smiled, genuine, without the sharp edges, and dissolved into shadow. 3 months later, Avengers Tower. The coffee in the break room was actually good now. Tony had personally overseen the installation of a custom espresso system, motivated partly by Alucard's constant complaints and partly by his own caffeine addiction. The vampire had kept his word. No unauthorized killings, minimal diplomatic incidents, and 3 successful missions against supernatural threats that would have devastated entire cities. He'd also, to everyone's surprise, started attending team meetings. The Arctic entities were 4th-dimensional parasites, Alucard reported, standing before the holographic display showing mission aftermath. They feed on temporal energy, creating localized time loops to trap victims. I consumed 17. The rest fled back to their dimension. Casualties? Steve asked. 3 S.H.I.E.L.D. agents wounded, none fatal. I ensured medical evacuation before pursuing the entities into their home dimension. You went into another dimension. Tony sounded impressed despite himself. Briefly, it was unpleasant. Everything existed in multiple time states simultaneously, very disorienting. Alucard accepted a cup of coffee from the machine, ob-negative, synthetic, ethically sourced. I don't recommend it. Noted, don't invade time demon dimensions. Tony marked something on his tablet. Next item, Mephisto's formal petition to the Supernatural Council regarding Blackheart's consumption. They want either your extradition to Hell for trial or a formal apology. I vote neither, Natasha said. Seconded, Clint added. The Council has agreed to table the issue provided Alucard doesn't consume any more demon royalty without explicit approval, Strange said. That acceptable? Fine, but if they attack me first, I'm not responsible for what happens. Fair enough. The meeting continued. Threat assessments, mission schedules, coordination with international supernatural authorities. Routine bureaucracy that came with protecting reality. As it concluded, Steve approached Alucard privately. You've adapted well, better than I expected. Did you expect me to fail? I expected you to get bored and leave, or kill something you shouldn't and force us to try stopping you. The months are young yet, but Alucard's tone was light. Actually, Captain, I wanted to thank you. This arrangement, the covenant, the structure, the purpose, it's helping. I'm still a monster, still crave death. But having direction, having worthy challenges provided instead of having to create chaos to find them. He paused. It's close to what I had with Integra. Not the same, but close enough. That's what team means, Steve said. Finding purpose together. Before Alucard could respond, every alarm in the tower screamed simultaneously. Jarvis's voice cut through the chaos. Sirs, I'm detecting a massive energy signature approaching Earth. Classification, cosmic level threat. Estimated time to atmospheric entry, 4 minutes. Tony was already pulling up scans. What are we looking at? The display showed something vast descending from the stars. An entity of pure energy and ancient hunger, radiating power that made Thor's battles look like bar fights. Galactus-level signature, Jarvis reported, possibly a herald of. Finally, Alucard breathed, and his eyes blazed crimson with anticipation. Something worthy. Steve grabbed his arm. Wait for backup, we coordinate, we. No, Alucard pulled free gently. This is mine, per our covenant I get first attempt. He looked at Steve and something passed between them. If I fail, save them, all of them, but let me try. He dissolved into shadow before Steve could argue, reforming on the tower's rooftop, facing the descending cosmic entity. Come then, Alucard whispered to the approaching doom. Let's see if you're finally the one, the worthy opponent, the glorious death. Show me what 500 years has been building toward. The entity descended, and reality screamed. And somewhere deep in his ancient, impossible heart, Alucard smiled. The entity that descended from the stars was not Galactus, not a herald, not any cataloged cosmic threat in S.H.I.E.L.D.'s databases. It was something older, a fragment of a dead universe, seeking to consume this one and birth itself anew. The kind of threat that appeared once every 1,000 years, that required gods and heroes to unite, that reshaped the very concept of what was possible. Alucard faced it alone. The battle lasted 6 hours. It carved a trench across 3 states. It shattered mountains and boiled lakes. The Avengers watched from a distance, ready to intervene, held back only by Steve's order to honor the Covenant and Alucard's whispered request for one chance at worthy death. When the cosmic entity finally fell, consumed and integrated into Alucard's impossible soul collection, the vampire stood in a crater that would become a lake within a decade. His coat was shredded. His hat was gone. Blood, his own, for the first time in a century, ran from wounds that were already healing. He had fought something that could end worlds. And he had won. The Avengers found him sitting on the crater's edge, staring at the sunrise with an expression that might have been disappointment. "Still alive," he said quietly as Steve approached. "Still here, still unable to die." "I'm sorry," Steve said and meant it. "Don't be," it was glorious. The entity was magnificent, powerful beyond measure. It hurt me in ways I haven't been hurt in centuries. For 6 hours, I genuinely believed it might succeed. Alucard smiled, tired but genuine. "That's worth something. That's worth continuing. So you'll stay, honor the Covenant." "I'll stay. This universe has potential. More threats will come. Maybe one of them will finally be enough." He stood, coat reforming from shadows, new hat materializing from darkness. "Besides, I've grown fond of your little team. The captain with unshakable morals, the genius in armor, the sorcerer who pretends he has everything under control, the widow who understands what it means to carry blood debt, even the vampire hunter who wants me dead." "We're fond of you too," Steve admitted, in a terrified, deeply concerned way. "That's the best kind of fondness." 3 months became 6. 6 became 12. Alucard became a permanent fixture of Earth's supernatural defense. Not an Avenger, he'd refused that honor, but something else. The monster in the shadows who fought so heroes didn't have to. The weapon pointed at threats too dark, too terrible, too cosmic for conventional heroism. He never found his worthy death. But he found something else: purpose without a master, allies without servitude, battles worth fighting and a world worth protecting, not because he was commanded to, but because he chose it. In the depths of the Sanctum Sanctorum, Dr. Strange kept a file marked ALUCARD, Existential Threat Assessment. The conclusion, updated monthly, always read the same: dangerous, unpredictable, absolutely essential. In S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters, Maria Hill maintained a threat board with Alucard's name at the top, but next to it, in smaller letters, she'd added, "Asset, somehow." In vampire territories across the globe, Dracula's followers whispered of the no-life king who'd chosen heroes over conquest, who served without being bound, who proved that monsters could choose to be something more. And in Avengers Tower, in the break room with the custom coffee system, there was an empty chair that everyone knew belonged to the vampire who'd integrated himself into Earth's defense through sheer, impossible persistence. The chair was rarely filled. Alucard was usually deployed, fighting something somewhere in shadows where heroes couldn't or wouldn't go. But it was his chair, his place, his choice. And that, perhaps, was the most human thing about him. 500 years of death, 3 million consumed souls, one universe that didn't destroy him but instead gave him something he hadn't known he needed. A reason to continue existing that wasn't just the search for worthy death, but the choice to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. The monster who ate demons, the vampire who fought gods, the weapon who chose to serve. Alucard had entered the Marvel universe seeking opponents. He'd found something far more dangerous: purpose. And in the shadows of New York, in the quiet moments between cosmic threats and dimensional incursions, he smiled that sharp, ancient smile and waited for the next challenge. Because worthy death would come eventually. But until then, there was work to do. Monsters to fight, heroes to assist, coffee to criticize. And a universe that had proven, against all odds, to be worth protecting. In the Marvel universe, where gods walk among mortals and cosmic entities reshape reality on a whim, Alucard the no-life king found not the death he sought, but the life he deserved. A monster given purpose, a weapon given choice, an immortal given reason to continue. More stories await in the shadows he now calls home.